friends at Tivoli Brewing Company and the Department of Communication Arts and Sciences at MSU Denver, this is Unfiltered. And here are your hosts, Jay Schrader and Dr. Samuel J.
We have a very special guest today, our buddy Ken Hehir from Tivoli Brewing Company. Ken, it's good to see you. You shaved for this interview. We're really, really appreciative of that.
Yeah, I even washed my hair.
Have you?
You're going to have to tell us what that conditioner is.
No yes, kidding. It's a special gray version.
So have you received an in-home haircut yet from the wife?
I have not. I badly need one, but I'm going to put that off for a week or so, see how it all goes. Okay,
you're willing to put. Well, that's what I can't decide if I want to let my wife cut mine this weekend or put it off like for a week and just go out there and have somebody do it, because I've let her cut it once and it was fine. But I mean, if you look too closely, there were some question marks.
Yeah, probably.
I generally, as a rule, try to avoid my wife getting anywhere near me with scissors or sharp objects. So,
especially in this crisis.
Yes. Yeah. I think a night in jail would do her good. Frankly, she could probably justify the homicide, and she'd enjoy a night out away from the kids.
Oh, no shit. My God. Yeah. I'm thinking about camping in the backyard just to do that. But Ken Hehir, will you introduce yourself and then we'll jump into questions, but we want to hear what you think of you. So let's start there.
Okay. Well, currently running Tivoli Brewing Company, Denver, Colorado. Originally from Scotland, moved to Colorado in 95 with my wife and two, at the time, very young daughters. And pretty much been here ever since. I said I would come check it out for 2 years, and I'm still here.
Okay, so out of curiosity, let's just start there. Kind of let's hear your background aside from your own kind of quick bio. Why did you make a career out of beer? Because in looking at your LinkedIn and knowing who you are and being good friends, and drinking plenty of beer with you, why beer? Because it seems to be something that you were in from day one, right?
Yeah. Actually, when I graduated from college, I joined Kraft General Foods. So actually, I was in coffee before I was in beer. Uh-huh. So I've really always been in beverages. Okay. So the first 3.5 years with Kraft General Foods was working mostly on coffee brands. And over in the UK, they had desserts as well, powdered desserts, Bird's Custard and weird stuff, Maxwell House Coffee, a couple of European coffee brands. So really I started in coffee. And at the week I started with General Foods is when they announced the merger with Kraft. So I was there over 3 years, and then they said, hey, we're going to move the headquarters to Kraft's headquarters, which was even further away from Scotland than where we were living. So that's when I just started looking around, maybe a job back in Scotland, and I stumbled on the one at Scottish in Newcastle. So I didn't really leave college with a view to, hey, a career in beer. I mean, I drank beer, I was interested in beer, but I certainly wasn't an expert. And that became quite clear on day one that I had a lot to learn about beer.
I would be remiss to not ask this, or we would be remiss, but did you grow up in a household where a fine-tuned tongue or palate for good alcohol was celebrated, being that you're from Scotland, or it wasn't something that was really...
Yes, but back then, I mean, this is a few years ago. This would be like the late 80s. The business in Scotland and England was kind of different in that on-premise or bars and restaurants was 90% of the business. So grocery stores and liquor stores were only 10%. So people typically back then didn't drink much at home. They mostly drank in bars. Nothing wrong with that.
Was there a
social aspect, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, was there a socio-cultural aspect to that?
That's a historic thing in the UK where, the pub was the centre of the neighbourhood or the centre of the town, or, the brewery was the town, gathering place or whatever. So I think that's historic. I mean, the UK is kind of not dissimilar to the US now. I think it's about 60% off premise. The US is 75%. But my parents, had a glass of wine. My dad drank beer. He liked whiskey. So yeah, there was knowledge of alcohol without a ton of it in the house at the time.
Awesome.
So then, Ken, moving from craft to Scottish Newcastle, how the hell did you go all the way to Coors? I mean, was it a direct route?
There was a connection there. So I was with Scottish Newcastle, about 4.5 years, 5.5 years, 4.5 years. Call it 4.5. So I was one of the jobs I had there. My last job, Scottish Newcastle set up a joint venture with Coors, with the goal of launching the Coors brand in the UK. At that time, Budweiser was there, Miller Genuine Draft was there, and they saw an opportunity for a third American beer. And they didn't have an American beer in their portfolio. So I was put in charge of the team launching Coors in the UK. So I did that for about 2.5 years. During that time, I technically reported to the board of the joint venture, which was some Coors guys, some Scottish and Newcastle guys.
So it was like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely separate companies with basically a JV to handle the marketing.
Gotcha.
So that involved 4 board meetings a year, three over in the UK and 1 in Colorado. So I was out here on a regular basis. And I was actually out on a trip in September 94. My wife was 8 months pregnant with our second daughter. And while I was in Golden, Coors offered me a job. They said, "Hey, we want you to come over here, work for us. We want you to run our import portfolio. What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but I'd need to ask Scottish and Newcastle if they're okay with it. And I need to ask my wife if she's okay with it." So
in that order?
Well, I actually had them ask Scottish and Newcastle. They took care of that part. I said, "I'll take care of the important part."
Perfect.
So I fly home to my 8-month pregnant wife and said, "Oh, by the way, they want me to go work for them in Colorado. What do you think?" Well, she'd been out here with me on one of the trips and loved it. Kind of daunting though, a long way from home, 5,000 miles with a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old, but she signed up for it and said, "Hey, what the hell, let's try it for a couple of years." And we're still here.
So
that's awesome.
What is your? I mean, well, I guess we kind of backed our way into your career, but what is your area of expertise? I know you're a CEO now, but coming out of college, what was that thing that you really kind of thought you were good at that you could really put a foot down in the market and make work?
Yeah, so I did my college degree was business studies, and I double majored in finance and marketing. I thought I was going to be a finance guy, and I realized before the end of college that it's useful having that background, but that's not what I want to do. So my goal was more focused on the other side, the marketing side. When I joined Kraft General Foods, they threw me into the sales force. It's a kind of graduate trainee program, but they give you a sales job and say, "Go figure it out." I mean, lots of training, but so I started in sales, customer marketing, brand marketing. So most of my career was either marketing or sales, definitely commercial roles, but with increasing kind of responsibility for general management roles.
If anybody knows Ken who's listening to this, like Jay and I have had plenty of beers with Ken, he is an absolute bullshitter. So this makes total sense then. He's got a degree in it.
He's a professional salesman. Yeah,
He is. What are you drinking, buddy? You want to show that on the video?
This is our Mountain Squeeze IPA.
That is a good beer. That is a very good beer.
And I saw the Roadrunner Red in cans just getting announced. That's the one I'm jacked about.
They canned it this morning for the first time ever.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
When can we start picking it up?
Actually, no, that's a lie. Tomorrow morning. This is Thursday. Morning. All the days roll into one. This is Thursday.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not your fault. When we start drinking at 10 a.m., every day of the week, nobody gives a shit about the days of the week.
I have to thank you guys for arranging this for 3:00 in the afternoon because it gave me an excuse to crack my first one. So
I hate to admit it, I'm actually drinking water. after 8 straight weeks of this shit, I need to rehydrate. So I wish I could get an IV in
I
my
had that
system.
too. I have a glass of water.
Yeah.
Jay, I'm having I'm having a Boston sour.
Oh,
yeah,
I haven't seen
Jay
that
shared a
video get
recipe
posted yet.
Yeah, I posted it the other day. Yes.
Oh, you did? I'm gonna have to go.
And you know what a Boston sour is?
I dread to think.
Oh my God! Jay, go ahead.
It's a whiskey sour with egg white. That's all. It's just it's rye whiskey, lemons, and an egg white. And it I had never had one before. Frankly, I just thought it sounded fun to make, and it turned out to be pretty fucking good. So
It sounds very healthy.
For sure.
and it's not. Yeah, the raw egg threw me off, but it tastes great. So. All right, hang on though, because not that I'm usually the guy that actually brings the conversation back to business, but I want to know about the Coors import portfolio that you're working with, because right off the top of my head, that screams Killian's to me. Is that right?
Yeah. So back then, Coors had a specialty division called Unibev.
Okay.
And the brands there were Killian's. We imported Steinlager from New Zealand, which is part of Line Nathan. We had Castlemaine 4X, Australian beer.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, what happened there?
Sam's fucking with things.
Oh, there we go.
He's just playing with the recording.
No, it's trying.
And then, wow.
Can you
that
see?
That scared me.
So?
I can see now.
Okay. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay.
Carry on, Ken. Just ignore the man behind the curtain.
Yes. Killian's, Steinlager, Castlemaine 4X. And then actually that was the group. It was our group. We had what was called Coors Seasonals. And those Coors Seasonals became Blue Moon. That's where we developed. So we said, we need a craft brand. And that was the team with Jim Sabia, who's now running Corona, Modelo, the whole Constellation marketing. Myself, Jim Sabia, and a lady called Sally Ritter. And Keith Villa, the brewer. That's where Blue Moon was born.
So do you, I guess...
So Blue Moon,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So that Blue Moon became part of that Unibev portfolio. So it actually launched fall of 1995. That's when it first saw the light of day.
I'll be damned. Well, is there something that
That's awesome
that drinkers would be able to? What is the most proud moment you had as a marketing director for Coors, or in that position? What was the most rewarding deliverable that you still think about?
I would say, can I give two answers? Because there's one big and one small.
Yeah, of course.
So, because people talk about big beer, small beer, craft beer, whatever, but it's all it's all beer. So I'd say the big beer thing I'm most proud of is when we relaunched Coors Light in 2001, 2002, early 2002, with the Twins campaign and all the crazy stuff Coors Light did to really change people's impression of what Coors Light is, and it's been on a roll ever since. In a couple of kind of flat years after that, but that relaunch it made people think differently about what Coors Light was.
What was it before?
It was a soccer mom's beer.
Yeah. Really?
It was very, it was an older profile. It was a suburban profile. This is back in 2001, 2002. People in their early 20s were not drinking Coors Light. And this completely changed the mindset. It pissed off the soccer moms, but that's okay.
I bet. I remember the Twins billboard at I-25 in Alameda. It nearly caused an accident every time I went by.
Oh, I think David from Comrade, doesn't he have the poster of the Twins up in there? He and Marks have it in their brew room.
Oh, I think so, in the back. Yeah. I got a Coors Light girl hanging up in the garage. So
So wait, Ken, what were those meetings? What were those conversations that you're having with people to try? Internally, I don't know how much you can say, but those had to be interesting conversations, right?
They were. We had a CMO who was kind of leading the charge. He says, look, we've got to change this. Doing the same thing's not working. We had the advertising agency all on board. Everyone was all excited about it. We had all the agencies working on it in terms of various pieces of the marketing mix. So, it was all in. And funnily enough, although FCB in Chicago did the TV ads, it was actually Integer here in Lakewood who found the twins.
Oh.
So it was myself and a guy called John Wilhelm went out to Vegas looking for things for looking for fun, but
what a trip.
looking. So basically, our brief was, hey, we're having a convention, we're doing this big relaunch. Let's bring some, nightclub excitement to the distributor convention. So we visited a couple of talent agencies in Vegas. We went to a couple of bars, nightclubs, looking for ideas, silhouette dancers, that kind of thing. And it was actually one of the talent agencies in Vegas. The twins lived in LA, but they'd signed with this Vegas agency. So that's where we found them. So wearing two hats, with the TV hat on, I said, hey, I found the twins. Because, they auditioned for twins and hadn't really found the right thing. And we found them in Vegas.
Why do you think
I have a whole new respect for this man?
Yeah, no kidding. This guy.
No, I'm serious. Like,
I don't think, Ken, that you can necessarily teach somebody to do what you do, not selecting talent per se like that, or, going on these, adventure trips. But I mean, having that vision. Is that something that you had as a kid, do you think? Like, did you, in talking to your parents and talking to your siblings now, is that something that you always had? Because I don't think it can be taught. It's got to be an innate ability.
I think it more comes from you. You got to understand the big picture. Big picture strategy comes from that, and then the ideas flow down from that. So they're not just wild ideas; they're ideas related to what it is you're actually trying to do. There was a guy I worked for at Coors called Lee Buxton, and he is the best I've ever seen at that. He taught me a lot because he got it, and then he was a great ideas guy, but they had to be strategic ideas.
Can you give anything away to our listeners? I mean, I know that we have a lot of listeners who are running their own, craft breweries, but is there a tip or two that you could share? Is it putting a bunch of shit up on the wall?
Unfortunately for all craft brewers, those kind of budgets we were working for are kind of different.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's probably the biggest difference between the two. It's the resources. But the thinking's still the same. I mean, the thinking's still valid, and not all ideas have to cost a lot of money. But that was more, hey, we have this big idea for the relaunch. How do we really maximize it at every level? And that's the same in craft beer. Maximize it everywhere. Consistency of message, what it is you're trying to do. So there's definitely learnings. So that was my big thing I'm proud of, and I was just a small part of it because we had 3 brand managers at the time, a marketing director, a CMO, 3 different agencies. So I mean, there's a lot of people working on this. The other one was my job immediately after that, for the next 5 years actually, was running Blue Moon. So I'd kind of gone full circle. I was there at the start of Blue Moon. By the time I took it on in 2002, it actually grown and then declined. And it was about, I think, 29,000 barrels nationally. And it was really only in 3 big markets, Denver, Chicago, Boston. They did all the volume. And then the idea was, hey, we got to make something of this. And actually one of the first things I had to do was to write a paper on why we shouldn't kill it. Because we only brewed it once a month. It was a pain to brew. So the brewery operations people were all over it. They wanted to discontinue it. And I said, no, craft's going to come back. This is going to be a player. We've got a real point of difference here. So thankfully they listened to me, because in 5 years it had grown to 750,000 barrels.
That's amazing. Did that work in the Blue Moon side, which it's funny for me to hear from the guy that had to deal with the Twins and Blue Moon, because those are probably the 2 beers that I drank the most in 0102 initially when I turned 21. So it's brings a tear to my eye. But does that exposure to the Blue Moon side, is that what paved the way for you to move into craft?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd always been more on the kind of crafty side in that, working on Killian's, working on Steinlager, very much on-premise focused. So really,
Okay.
Blue Moon, Coors Light was really the first big budget brand at that level I'd worked on. I mean, I had a little bit in Scotland, but Coors Light spills more dollars than Blue Moon could ever spend. I mean, it was crazy, the difference in resource and just a completely different approach. So, yeah, it was fine and fun working on the big brand, but I had a lot of fun working on the small brand and being stealthy and growing it, quietly and effectively, and the growth numbers were nuts. So, same principles, but just very different approach. So it really wasn't a hard transition to go from the big brand to the tiny brand.
So I'm assuming that has something to do with your willingness to kind of take over Tivoli. So how did you get there? How did you get from tours to Tivoli? Because I know there's some pivots in between then and now.
Yeah. So when Coors did the joint venture with Miller, that's I left in 2007. Mm-hmm. And then I did a couple of other things, mostly related to beer, working for myself. And then actually I went back to Molson Coors on the international side. So I worked on a couple of global brands, Staropramen and Carling. And then I ran a tea company for a year. So stayed in beverage, but actually I was the CEO of a tea company up in Louisville.
Okay.
Celestial Seasonings?
No, Cooper Tea Company. But
Cooper, okay.
But Barry Cooper, who I worked for, he was one of the Celestial guys.
Okay. That's crazy trajectory.
Yeah, it was, and it was fun. It was fun learning a new business, a new industry. It was still beverage, but honestly, at the end of the day, at 5 o'clock, you're not going to say to someone, "Hey, do you want to go for a cup of tea?" You're going to say, "Do you want to go for a bit?" So then, then I moved to Portland for 2 years and worked for Pyramid and Portland Brewing. And it's when I was out there that I got approached to come back to Denver and run Tivoli. So that was an easy choice. Really enjoyed the Pint Northwest, enjoyed the people up there, the place, enjoyed working on the brands, but it was easy to come back to Denver.
What do you see as, through all these years of experience and all these jumping off points, what are the biggest similarities, or more importantly, what are the biggest differences between your time at Coors and all your time in craft? I mean, you said it yourself, you probably were more on the craft side mentally from what it sounds like, and that was your approach. But what stands out the most? Yeah,
the other big brand I worked on I worked in Coors Banquet for a while and on Keystone Light, which is a big brand. But I think ultimately the beer business is a people business. I'd say that's the biggest similarity. Big beer gets a bad rap, but ultimately you're dealing with a lot of the same people. So you have the people at the brewery, but you're using the same wholesalers, you're using the same retailers. In many cases, it's the same consumer, not always. There's a lot of crossover consumers. So really, same business other than the size of the brand or the size of the brewery itself. I would say that in terms of differences, I think there's more similarities than differences. I'll say that. But in terms of the differences, I think it's just more the scale, the resources. And
I was going to ask if you missed the budget.
Oh, yeah. But because of the resources are different, then the approach is different. The principles are the same, but then you have to approach it differently. Decision making is much easier in craft because it's smaller, less layers of bureaucracy. Coors actually wasn't too bad at all. They were actually, I like to describe them as a big family company, professionally run, rather than a corporate bureaucracy. Now, I can't talk to what they are now, that it's Miller Coors and then Molson Coors and everything else, but the old Coors Brewing Company, right up until 2007, was a great place to work. And
Pete's Coors, right?
Yeah, and the people I worked with then, I'm still friends with. I still keep in regular touch. And in fact, I ran into David Coors the other day. I was out for a walk with my wife, and I didn't even know he lived here. I was walking past his house. He's out washing his car. So there were a lot of good people, and a lot of those guys I work with are working in craft beer or craft spirits, or we're never too far removed from each other.
So I guess along the same lines. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, those are probably the biggest differences, but I don't. I think there's probably more similarities, just because, ultimately it's beer.
Well, and I think the theme that we've probably seen over almost 2 years of this shit show, and just talking to you as well, it's beer and it's people, and after that, everything else is just bullshit.
Yeah, and I think that, to me, that's one of the things that I think people lose sight of. The people who are creating waves in the industry or creating waves in the news. That's not what it's like at brewery level or street level or local level. I mean, we all talk to each other. It's not like we're enemies. People can try and make us enemies. We're not.
I think that's something that Jay and I have learned just in our conversations with, in particular, the guys from Revolution in Chicago, where, Goose Island is not hated in Chicago at all. I mean, a lot of people realize that buyout of Goose Island allowed Goose Island to make great beer. It allowed them to do all their barrel-aged stouts, all their crazy-ass stuff that you can get. And so I guess if I could put this in a question, do you think that difference between big beer, small beer, big beer, craft beer is a construction more than it is a reality?
It's definitely a self-serving narrative for some people.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
So, but then, big beer doesn't help itself by, I even hate calling it big beer. I mean, it's just big breweries. I mean, but when they start fighting with each other, that doesn't do beer any good. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Petty.
It's the same way that, I'll give you an example, and without naming names, we were using a beer name for one of our seasonals, and it turned out that someone else had used it. So we didn't get a lawyer's letter or anything else. The guy called me, called him back, and he said, "Hey, just want to give you a heads up. We have this name." Shit, I never knew. Sorry, we did a search, didn't come up. Blah blah blah. He said, "How much stock have you got?" I told him. He said, "How long will it take you to sell it through?" I said, 30 days. Maybe 6 weeks max. I said, "No problem. Sell it through and then change the name next year." That's how it should work. I didn't really need to get a lawyer's letter and a cease and desist and all that crap. We just figured it out.
Just like that.
Yeah.
God.
Is that the exception more than the rule, though?
I would say that's more the rule in craft beer.
It is.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, a lot of that happens. Not with big guys. The big guys are
Craft to craft.
Yeah.
Okay.
The same way, we get calls from a local brewer near us. "Hey, we're short a bag of hops.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any of X hop?" "Sure, we've got it." "Hey, we need it for brew this afternoon. Any chance we could borrow it and we'll replace it?" "Sure. Come pick it up."
I love hearing that.
That happens all the time. All the time.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room then, right? Which is why also, partly of why we want to talk to you. But
are you calling me an elephant?
No. Sorry, my wife is calling me though. Okay, so COVID-19 time. What have you been faced with at Tivoli? What's going on? What have you had to deal with over the last 2 months? I cannot imagine it's been great. I've been talking to you, been talking to Steph. It's been a brutal. So can you summarize it in a few minutes?
It's brutal. Actually, is a really good word. So March 16th was the Monday where it all went down. We'd actually decided. We'd really kind of decided on Friday the 13th. I spent some time thinking about it over the weekend and said, it's absolutely time to close. Called all the staff in Monday morning, said, hey, we're going to shut down. This is not safe. Number one priority, safety. Safety, then survival. And then rebounding, hopefully, at some stage down the line. So, and they were very supportive. They got it, telling 35 people were shut in the tap room. It's never pleasant, but we figured out how we could keep them whole and everything else, some things we could do for them. We literally broke up that meeting. Someone walked in and said, Hancock just announced everything's shutting tomorrow. So we were 24 hours ahead of the game. But so essentially, 80% of our business went overnight. Tap room is 50% of our revenue, about 15% of our beer. And of the remaining 50%, 2/3 of that's draft beer, bars and restaurants. So we have a third of a half left. So we have 18% of our business left. And that's what we've been surviving on.
Were you losing sleep at this point? I mean, I can imagine.
I mean, I was worried, but you try and stay positive. It's more, safety of the staff. And at that stage, it was just tap room affected. We kept all the sales team and everyone else on. We processed payroll immediately for the tap room, so they were covered for the rest of the month. They had cash in their hand until unemployment kicked in. We kept an eye, make sure no one was dealing with any hardships or anything like that. End of the month, furloughed the sales team, staff in the tap room. So really a skeleton staff, myself, finance lady, 4 brewers, our driver, warehouse guy. That's it.
So are you, I guess, as the kind of figurehead of a business, you're the CEO, obviously. Is there a responsibility to email the employees about things like unemployment and here's how you do it? Or do you how does that dispersal of information, how does that play out? Do you do it?
There was a lot of information sharing.
Okay.
And honestly, so most of them were going to be fine. And then when the federal grant kicked in or the federal dollars kicked in, they're all whole. I don't think there might be one person in the whole team who has not got the monthly income they weren't having before. The other important thing, and I think this gave everyone a peace of mind, and I don't see how I could have done it differently anyway, and slept at night, was we kept everyone's medical insurance whole. So people who are furloughed or laid off, we are still paying their medical premiums. So everyone has got full medical coverage, and we're paying it 100% until this is done.
That's amazing.
Well, because in this day and age, how could I, in good conscience, say, hey, we're yanking your medical benefits?
Yeah, you're done.
I couldn't look in the mirror. I mean,
well, I think I'd like to think that you guys maybe are just slightly better in tune, or offering those benefits that other breweries aren't offered in the first place. So you have to continue with that. Like you said, breweries are families as far as Sam and I can tell at this point. So you guys were prohibited from any kind of sales on premise for quite a while, right? AHEC was not allowing anybody on campus, except for apparently Sam kept sneaking on to do work. I don't know what that was all about.
No.
But,
well, they allowed us to keep operating the brewery. Obviously, tap room closed. I kind of pleaded the case that, hey, the brewery is self-contained, has its own entrance, is not putting any, pulling any other resource from the campus. So
yeah, no additional stress on.
So we kept doing that. We've continued to brew, continued to can, and then in the last 2 weeks, we've actually figured out a way to do to-go sales. So to begin with, our kitchen and tap room is shut down completely. So doing food to go was never an option. But we figured out a way of how we could do beer sales online and have a couple of pickup windows where people come to the loading dock and pick up the beer.
I guess sorry, go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say, has that kicked off yet, or is that brand new?
We started last week, so this is
last week. Okay,
this is week 2 of that, and it's gone pretty well. I mean, people are ordering.
Have you seen that 18% start to creep back up into the 20s, or no?
Nah, really, if anything, that 18% dipped, and it's kind of come back. The ordering patterns off premise are kind of chaotic. I mean, buying patterns are all over the place. So there's some weeks where we're, sending a ton of beer to our distributor, and there's some weeks we're not sending any beer.
Huh.
So
what can you attribute that to? Anything? I mean, or is it just my conscience? Every other week, I'm like, shit, I got to slow down.
I think it was all the panic buying at the start.
Mm-hmm.
So retailers bought in, so they're sitting on more stock than they normally have. The wholesalers get more stock. So I think they're finally getting a balance of, here's how much beer we actually need.
Gotcha.
But the good news is we have beer in tank. We all of our core beers are seasonal. We have full tanks of everything. We're actually brewing probably once a week now to get backup tanks ready. But at the moment, all that beer is going into cans. No kegs at all.
What about you guys? Haven't had to dump anything, have you? I mean, we're hearing a lot of stuff in the media about breweries sitting on gallons and gallons of beer that's going to go to waste.
No, we were on a pretty good roll in terms of fresh beer, because quite often we're not quite producing to order, but as soon as we're kegging stuff, it's going straight to the distributor. Any old beer we had in the lead up to this starting, we have the tap house to sell stuff through. So we weren't sitting on a ton of inventory, neither was our distributor, but that beer will be starting to age. So I'm saying we don't have any right now, but we will have some.
You could. Yeah.
We have a little bit of beer in our warehouse that will age out. That's easy. We'll have beer at our distributor that might age out. I think the trickier one is how much beer is sitting in retail accounts right now. If it's full kegs and it's been kept in a cooler, most of that beer is going to be still okay. If it's already been tapped, it'll need to be dumped.
Gotcha.
I mean, if it's been tapped, even if they only sold 10% of the keg, that beer's not going to survive 8 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just
or
not
longer at this point.
It's just not going to taste good.
Yeah.
It's not at the stage yet it's going to hurt anyone, but give it a couple of months, it could.
Was there anything in your career that prepared you for anything as crazy as this? I mean, you've been in this for a long time. Like, is this the wildest thing?
No. If anyone says yes to that question, they're lying. I mean, the only way I could answer that is just say just the longevity of my career. People who say I thought I'd seen everything. Well, no, I couldn't have seen this. I've just seen enough stuff that. Same principle. You step back, look at big picture, and go. How are we going to work our way through this? I think what's hardest about this is just the unknown.
Yeah.
No one knows what's going to happen. You can plan, you can have all the different scenarios. You don't know exactly what's going to happen because we just don't know. I mean, if we go back too quickly, is it going to rebound? And ultimately, this whole thing is going to be decided by the consumer.
Yeah.
If the consumer has confidence, they will come back. If the consumer doesn't have confidence, you can open up as many bars as you want. If the consumer's not confident, they're not coming. Your bar will be empty.
I go shopping every week at Natural Grocer. And so I always like to ask, what are people buying? And apparently they cannot keep local craft beer on the shelf there. People go in there and they just buy a shitload of it. The stuff that is kind of hard to find elsewhere. They got a lot of really wild Four Noses that you really can't find at big liquor stores. But they said, yeah, in kombucha, wild kombucha, and their organic hard seltzer, the stuff that comes from Colorado, people they're wanting to buy it there. And I never would have thought that Natural Grocer of all places, right? And that's probably not all natural grocers, but it's interesting to see, as you pointed out, Ken, the trends that we're going to see over the next 6 to 12 months might define the next era of craft beer.
Yeah, and I think that is probably also the type of consumer that goes to Natural Grocers or Sprouts or Whole Foods. I don't think you're going to see that phenomenon at Walmart or Target, but you're going to see it there or in pockets. Because my local King Supers has got a great selection of craft beer. They're really good. So I've been supporting them, but it's going to look different. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
I always like your candidness, your candor, if you will. I don't know how well you can answer this, but is the BA doing a lot to help everybody? Because I'm listening to Brewbound, I'm listening to the podcast, I'm trying to read as much as possible, and it seems like they're giving a lot of data without giving a lot of guidance. And maybe that's their role, but are you feeling that support from the BA? And
I would say I've been pleasantly surprised. I've not always been the biggest fan of the BA.
Yeah.
My earlier reference to picking fights that they don't need to fight and promoting beer overall rather than being divisive. But actually, I think they've really stepped up. I've been impressed. They're providing a lot of resources. They held the craft beer conference online, and there was a lot of good sessions, but just more their general. They just published something last week about how to reopen. It was like an 8-page document with all kinds of links, lots of best practices on if and when we can reopen safely. What does that look like? Here's some things to think about. So I've been surprised, pleasantly surprised. I think they're doing a nice job. I also think the Colorado Brewers Guild are doing a really good job. Same thing. They, especially early on when we did our 2-hour prohibition in Denver, they
had to react fast, huh?
They were all over the mayor's office, and I was getting really worried because, to me, closing liquor stores was bad enough. I was actually watching the press conference, and a reporter asked the mayor, "What about breweries? Do they have to close?" And he said, "Yes." So I was like, holy shit, now we have to close a brewery as well. So I was worried about liquor stores. I was even more worried about the breweries. The Colorado Brewers Guild were all over that, and by the end of the evening had got clarification from the mayor's office that tap rooms closed, breweries as food manufacturing facilities were exempt. So they really stepped up there. So that, and they're good with their information, but I think the Brewers Association are probably taking the lead in terms of the source of information because they have more resources.
Well, hats off to both the guild and the association because they've both had to cut staff significantly over the last month. Shawnee's a one-woman show now, and I think the BA cut 47% of its staff or something like that. It was a pretty dramatic number. Not all that surprising, frankly, but still scary to think about either way. Ken, look into that crystal ball of yours that 20 plus years of experience should have brought with it. What does the next 3 months look like? 6 months? Are there any kind of markers in the future that you can point to that we should expect from this, or is it just a shit show?
Well, yes, but I said, I kind of went on record when this started, middle of March, late March. Everyone was talking about, hey, this will be 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I said, I planned it out in terms of the summer. I said, best case scenario, Memorial Weekend. Mm-hmm. Mid case, July 4th. Worst case, Labor Day.
That's a pretty good crystal ball.
I still think, in a limited way, the mid case is probably going to be closer to than anything. I still think July 1st is more realistic than June 1st or mid-June. I think there'll be some restaurant openings allowed in June, and that's going to look very different. I don't think there'll be any bar seating happening anywhere anytime soon.
What do you think of this idea that's floating around to shut down entire city streets and push the consumer and the restaurant and bar industry into street seating?
Where the logistics allow it, I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. Funnily enough, you mentioned that's my big idea for the campus. We've asked AHEC on the campus to allow us to extend our patio into that footprint outside the brewery. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why not, right?
We use it 4 times a year when we extend our license for special events, but I want to make it permanent throughout the summer. And we basically stage a big beer garden out there, space all the tables out, put temporary bar out there, or just serve it out the bar. We haven't worked out the logistics, but in terms of consumer confidence, consumers are going to feel much safer sitting outside if they're spaced out, and it's a safe, sterile environment in terms of, hey, there's hand sanitizers, they've thought through beer menus, physical menus, how the food's delivered. But the main thing is sitting outside. In the open air atmosphere is much, much safer for now, and that will build their confidence.
Yeah, I'm actually impressed by the notion that I think it's the Denver Downtown Partnership was the first one to float the idea. But it makes a ton of sense to me. The only weak link in that chain, in my opinion, is weather in Denver and Colorado is so unpredictable to begin with that you've got to have, like you're talking about, probably a industrial type beer garden tent, really to be a semi-permanent fixture. And in the back of my mind, looking at that 6-month picture, if this thing boomerangs like some statistics are indicating, then you're just going to have a bunch of pissed off breweries and restaurants and bar owners when all of a sudden in November snowstorms are coming and they got to shut the streets down again, or shut the bars in the streets down.
Yeah, honestly though, I don't think it takes a crystal ball to work this one out. The most successful bars and restaurants will be those with established outdoor areas. If you're sitting with a gorgeous patio or garden or beer garden, you're a winner. You're going to get some business. And that's why early I floated this to AHEC a month ago.
Nice.
And then, so they are very warm to it. They're like, hey, this is a great idea. We support it. We approached the licensing folks with it. We haven't made a formal application, but they understood what we were trying to do, and so we definitely consider it. And it's a footprint they've already approved for us for special events.
Right.
The fact that Downtown Denver Partnership and there's all the industry lobbying for this to happen strengthens our case, because we're not shutting down a street. We're just extending out from where we currently are into an unused.
Auraria's got nothing else going on, right? I mean, there's no students for the summer. You're not going to see a lot of faculty or staff on campus. There's no sporting events or any kind of crisscrossing of campus from any kind of other commuter of any kind.
No,
on a consistent basis.
So we're not going to have any foot traffic. So we have to make this a destination. People to make a conscious effort to come to our beer garden. We've got to make it attractive. We've got to make it safe. We got to make it, have bike racks so people can ride their bikes there. We might even have to have, porta potties rather than people come into the building to use the restrooms if they feel safer that way. Personally, I'd rather you use real restrooms than a porta potty, but that's just me. But we've got a whole bunch of kind of contingency plans to make Tivoli a destination, even if it's only through August.
Yeah, that's reassuring. Not that we expected anything less from you, but it's good to know that places like Tivoli and other breweries are hopefully exploring these options to really give us something to look forward to.
Yeah, it's funny. I was the week before everything shut down, so that would be, I think it was May 7th.
I was in there too many times. So
that was March 7th. Was a Saturday. I was in Golden. I was doing a soccer game at School of Mines, and after the game, we decided to go for beer. So we went over to New Terrain in Golden, and there must have been 2,000 people there outside. It's a glorious sunny day, the first real sunny day of the spring. I've never seen so many people in one place in all my life. So it was probably a melting pot of what was to come, but they've got a great outdoor space. That's the ideal place. People can go sit outside. Even then, they'll have to control numbers. Because anything we do, numbers are going to be controlled.
I don't want to miss this opportunity to ask this question, though. I mean, don't you think, Ken, that I understand AHEC has been welcoming to these conversations, but as you push that kind of barrier out, how soon until somebody says, well, if Tivoli can have these things, then we should be able to have music festivals on that green? Because, I mean, that's been going on for as long as I've been a professor at Metro, is people want to use that space because it's amazing. So I guess in line with that, are we going to see changes not just to our campus law, but to city, to state, to national law? You think moving forward, you expect big beer, small beer to kind of continue to push these boundaries?
I hadn't really thought about it that way, but one thing, I think the signals we're getting are very clear that people are willing to be much more accommodating.
Yeah.
So before it was no, what's the question? Now it's, oh, that's not a bad idea. We'll definitely consider that. And so I think there's going to be a lot more, hopefully, flexibility for good ideas that are safe, that are well thought out, and they make sense. Because, I think there's, Jay's earlier question on, what is the next 3, 6, 12, 18 months? Who knows what that crystal ball looks like? But one thing I know for sure is that on-premise and tap rooms, as we know it, will not go back to anything like normal until there's a vaccine. They just can't. So whether that vaccine's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then how do you get 2 billion people in the world vaccinated quickly? That's going to take a while.
Are you better off because you're canning, frankly?
Thank God we're canning, but again, that 18% of revenue or 20% of revenue is not sustainable long term. It gets you to the destination. We're just not sure where the destination is and when it will be. So we couldn't survive on 12 months of just canning. Yeah. We're not going to be in 12 months without some kind of bounce back. And then if you look at, bars, restaurants, tap rooms, if they have the same fixed overhead as they currently do, but with 50% of the revenue, those economics don't work.
Yeah.
So, landlords and just the whole chain needs to be more understanding of, if we want someone here long term, we have to restructure deals and leases to recognize occupancy and restrictions that are placed. So, because ultimately, all your variable costs, your labor, your beer costs, your food costs, that's all going to be in relation to how many customers you've got. Even your utilities will be somewhat related to that. But if your rent's the same for a 200 occupancy restaurant as it is for a 100, then those economics still work.
We've said this before, you're the smartest person in the business that we know. So thank you for joining, for chiming in. Before we close up, I know Jay's got one pressing question that both of us have been talking about.
I didn't want to close on that question because that was kind of depressing.
No.
This one's realistic but depressing.
Burning a hole in my brain. I gotta know what it is that you're reading or watching that's stacked up behind you, because
those puzzles? Clearly, yeah, they're puzzles.
Oh, they're puzzles.
Well, actually, I have a strategically placed book on top of them, which is 1001 beers you must try before you die.
Okay.
But the rest, those are all jigsaw puzzles.
All different ones.
Yep.
Have you guys done them all?
I've probably done about 10 jigsaws since all this shit started. And I've got about another 10 to do. We do jigsaw swaps. We'll give some to my daughter and some friends. And a friend of mine in Dallas sent me a whole bunch of jigsaws.
Yeah, we did one puzzle, and Tanya did 75% of it, and then I ran the ball into the end zone, and she got pissed. But I need to find some more. So I just had to figure out what the smartest guy in beer was doing to keep his mind sharp, and puzzles makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, so the way I try and rationalize it is, I don't watch a ton of TV except sport plus shows I want to watch. So without sport, I'm not going to watch all these kind of trashy shows. So I've been doing jigsaws. and they're really addictive. Really
you stole my
addictive.
last question. I was going to ask you this. Damn it, Ken. What are you missing most in terms of sport? What is it? Avalanche hockey? Is it baseball? What is the thing that you wake up every day and you say, "Damn it, I wish it was there"?
Probably there's several things I'm missing. So one is watching any sport.
Yeah.
I'm just a sports nut, but certainly Avalanche were on a roll. I was actually at the Avs game against New York Rangers the night before everything shut down. Another Biodome experience. 18,000, my closest friends. So I missed that. I missed the fact that we've got no baseball yet. In terms of playing, I missed out on my week up in Vail skiing, which I was supposed to do at spring break. Golf was gone for a while, but now I've played a few rounds in the last couple of weeks, so that's great. The thing I'm probably most missing in terms of participating is soccer, refereeing soccer.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
I'm missing soccer on TV. I'm missing all sports on TV, but especially soccer and baseball and hockey.
Have you been keeping track of any of the live soccer in what is it, Slovenia or
Belarus?
Or
Belarus.
Thank you. Apparently, I did not take European history, global history.
The German Bundesliga starts on Saturday.
Right, I've been tracking that, and I just read a report that says MLS may put everybody in Orlando,
Yeah,
and play the entire season right there in Orlando, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. But
there was a good article that Lauren Thiessen wrote. She used to write for Deadspin before they, sold off their staff. And I read it last week, and it's not the big sporting events that we miss. If you're a sports fan, it's just the monotony of sports. It's just the day-to-day, like, oh, there's a baseball
always
game.
there.
Yep, it's just there. And it's gone.
well,
it sucks.
And what do you talk to your friends about? You talk about freaking COVID-19 instead of sports.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
No.
I've realized that I don't have any friends because there's nobody to talk to now.
I mean, the friends you talk to are the friends that you have kids and they're home with their kids and it's, and their spouses.
Yeah.
And that. But
Well,
go ahead.
I thought what was amazing was, I was just going to say, just to show you how desperate we are for sports, how many people watched the NFL draft?
Oh, my God. Crazy.
That was stupid. I watched it. I've never watched it before. I used to walk in the room when it was the Broncos pick or whatever, but that was like, I watched the whole of the first night and I watched quite a bit of the second day as well.
Well, I'm up $35 this week on Russian ping pong, and I am not kidding whatsoever. So it's, I look at my odds and I bet, but Ken Hehir, thank you so much for joining Jay and I today. We cannot thank you enough. Really, really look forward to having a beer with you together in person soon because you're a great friend and, again, one of the smartest people we know in the industry. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. It was always great to catch up and see you. And as I say, hopefully that live pint we're having is sooner rather than later.
Exactly.
But when it's safe, of course. When it's
safe. In the meantime, I'll be ordering my Roadrunner Red online and picking it up at the warehouse.
Here you go. All right. See you, buddy. You guys take care.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Everybody have a good weekend.